Have you ever thought, just one wrong digit, and your entire world could collapse or be saved in a single heartbeat? Picture this right now. Queens, New York. Rain pouring in sheets, wind howling through the cracked window. Inside a freezing apartment, a frail single mother huddles on an old, sagging mattress, clutching a cracked screen phone with trembling hands. Her bank account holds only a few stray dollars. Her 7-year-old daughter Mia lies curled tight under thin blankets, coughing in harsh bursts, lips turning blue from lack of the special oat milk for her allergies. The medicine bottle is empty. The milk is gone. She bites her lip until it bleeds, typing each word like it's tearing her apart. Dan, I know I keep bothering you, but Mia needs her milk urgently. Just $50 enough to get us to Friday's paycheck. I swear I'll pay you back. Please. Her shaking finger hits send. Her heart feels like it's about to shatter. But that message never reaches Dan. It lands in a different phone, a phone resting on a glass table inside a multi-million-dollar penthouse overlooking the East River. The man holding it, Vincent Moretti, 48 years old, silver threading his hair, eyes sharp and cold like a blade. Today is the anniversary of his daughter's death, 8 years since a bullet tore through 7-year-old Sophia's chest. He just poured a bourbon hand, still unsteady from the memory. Then the message appears. A desperate plea from a stranger. The child's name, Mia. A child who is hungry, sick, and needs his help. He stares at the screen. A vein throbs hard at his temple. He could delete it, block it, forget it. But his finger moves anyway and types, I'm not Dan. You have the wrong number. That single moment, just one line of text, pierces the wall he built around his heart for 8 long years. On one side of the city, a destitute mother teetering on the edge of collapse, ready to beg anyone to save her child. On the other, a former mob boss who once made all of Brooklyn tremble, carrying an unhealed wound, now being dragged into something he never believed existed, compassion. They don't know. Just one wrong digit has plunged them into a whirlwind of forbidden love, dark secrets, cold-blooded conspiracy, and a horrifying truth that could destroy everything or redeem everything waiting to explode. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on the quiet power of kindness, especially when no one else chooses to show it. Share your thoughts in the comments, and tell us where you're watching from. Which city and country are you in? And what time is it there right now? It's always amazing to see how stories like this connect people from all over the world. Is it United States, London, maybe Canada, Jamaica, South Africa, or anywhere we want to know? And tell us what you learned at the end of this video. If moments like this remind you of the beauty of humanity, please like the video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss more powerful stories that celebrate compassion, courage, and the simple acts of kindness that can change life. October 2025, Queens, New York City. The wind howled through the cracked window of apartment 4C like it wanted to tear the place apart. Rain lashed the glass in angry sheets, turning the single bulb overhead into a trembling halo of yellow. Sarah Thompson sat on the edge of the sagging mattress that doubled as the living room couch, her thin shoulders hunched forward, elbows on her knees. Her hands, red-knuckled nails bitten to the quick clutched an old smartphone, whose screen was spider-webbed from a fall months earlier. The apartment smelled of damp plaster and the faint sourness of yesterday's spilled milk that she could no longer afford to replace. A single radiator hissed uselessly in the corner, offering less heat than the breath fogging from Sarah's lips. She wore the same faded gray hoodie she had slept in for 3 nights, running the cuffs frayed, the zipper broken. Beneath it, her ribs pressed sharply against skin that had grown too tight over too many skipped meals. On the floor beside her, 7-year-old Mia lay curled on a pile of blankets that had once been bright blue but were now gray with wear. Mia's dark hair spilled across the thin pillow, her small chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven breaths. The allergy medicine bottle on the milk crate that served as a nightstand was empty. The special oat milk, the only kind that didn't send Mia into hours of wheezing and hives, had run out 2 days ago. Sarah had watered down the last sip until it was barely white, then watched her daughter's confused frown as she tried to drink it. Sarah's stomach twisted, a familiar knife of guilt. She had promised herself she would never let it get this bad again. Yet here they were. Her thumb hovered over the cracked screen. The contact read, Q's in Dan. Dan lived in Jersey, now worked construction, sent $20 every couple of months when he could. He had told her last week he was short himself. Still, she had to try. She typed slowly, each letter feeling like a confession. Dan, I hate to ask again, but Mia needs her special milk. $50 would get us through till payday Friday. I swear I'll pay you back. Please. Her finger trembled above send. Pride burned in her throat, hot and bitter. She had once graduated community college with honors, once dreamed of an office job with benefits. Now she cleaned tables at a diner on Jamaica Avenue for minimum wage, plus whatever tips people felt like leaving when they saw how thin her arms were. She pressed send. The message whooshed away into the digital dark. Sarah exhaled, set the phone down on the blanket beside Mia, and pressed her palms to her eyes. The room spun gently. She hadn't eaten since yesterday's half sandwich. Sleep had been a series of short, jerking naps interrupted by Mia's coughing fits. Across the East River, in a penthouse that occupied the entire top floor of a glass tower in Dumbo, Vincent Vinnie Moretti stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, hands in the pockets of his charcoal wool trousers. 48 years old, fair-skinned, broad-shouldered hair, still thick but silvered at the temples. He wore a tailored navy shirt, with the sleeves rolled to the forearms, revealing the faint white scar that ran from wrist to elbow, a souvenir from a knife fight in Red Hook 20 years earlier. The city glittered below him like broken glass under streetlights. Rain streaked the window in long silver trails. Tonight was the anniversary. 8 years since the black SUV rolled past the playground on Court Street, and bullets tore through the afternoon air. 8 years since Sophia, 7 years old, braids flying as she ran toward the swing set, crumpled to the asphalt. Vinny had arrived 30 seconds too late. He carried the guilt the way some men carry a gun, always on him, always loaded. His private phone buzzed on the glass console table behind him. He ignored it at first, eyes fixed on the Manhattan skyline. Then it buzzed again. He turned, picked it up. The message was not from any of his lieutenants, not from the captains who reported to him nightly about collections, territories, the endless chess game of power in Brooklyn and Queens. Unknown number. Dan, I hate to ask again, but Mia needs her special milk. $50 would get us through till payday Friday. I swear I'll pay you back. Please. Vinny frowned. A wrong number. Obvious. He almost deleted it. But the words Mia and special milk landed like stones in still water. A child. A sick child. A mother who sounded like she was drowning. He stared at the screen. Rain tapped the glass like impatient fingers. Something inside him, something that had been locked away since the funeral where he stood dry-eyed because tears would have been weakness shifted. He typed before he could talk himself out of it. I think you got the wrong number. This isn't Dan. He hit send. In Queens, Sarah's phone lit up. She snatched it, heart leaping with fragile hope. Then she read the reply. Her stomach dropped. She checked the number. The last digit was wrong. She had typed 8 instead of 7. Horror flooded her chest, cold and sharp. A stranger had seen her begging. A stranger knew her daughter's name. She typed back quickly, fingers shaking so badly she had to delete twice. I'm so sorry. Wrong number. Please ignore that. I didn't mean to bother you. She pressed send and dropped the phone as if it burned. She curled around Mia, pulling the thin blanket higher, whispering apologies into her daughter's hair. I'm sorry, baby. Mommy's so sorry. The phone buzzed again. Sarah froze. She reached for it slowly like it might bite. Is your little girl going to be okay? The question was simple, gentle. Nothing like the brusque demands or pitying dismissals she usually got. Sarah's throat closed. Why would a stranger care? She typed back, voice in her head small and wary. We'll manage. Sorry again. She waited, breath held. The reply came almost immediately. I could help. No strings. Sarah laughed once, a dry, bitter sound that hurt her chest. In her experience, there were always strings. Men who offered help always wanted something company favors silence. Thanks, but I don't take money from strangers, she wrote. Smart came the response. I'm Vinny. Now I'm not a stranger. What kind of milk does Mia need? Sarah stared at the screen. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Part of her wanted to block the number and pretend this never happened. Another part, the part that had watched Mia cough until her lips turned blue last winter, hesitated. She looked at her daughter's sleeping face, the dark circles under Mia's eyes, the way her small hand clutched the edge of the blanket like it might disappear. Sarah's pride cracked just a little. It's oat milk, the special kind for allergies. It's expensive. She sent it before she could stop herself. A long pause. Then, what's your Venmo? Sarah's hands shook harder. She shouldn't. She really shouldn't. But Mia whimpered in her sleep, a small pained sound. Sarah typed her username. Seconds later, the phone buzzed with a notification. $500. Not 50. 500. Sarah gasped. The room tilted. She gripped the edge of the mattress to keep from falling over. This is way too much, she typed frantically. I can't accept this. Consider it enough to cover the next few months, the reply came. One less thing to worry about. Tears spilled hot down Sarah's cheeks. She hadn't cried when the landlord changed the locks last month and she had to beg the super to let her back in. She hadn't cried when the electric company shut off the power for 3 days. She hadn't cried when Mia asked why they couldn't have cereal anymore like other kids. But this $500 from a man whose name she barely knew broke something inside her. Thank you, she typed. The words felt inadequate, small. You're welcome, Sarah. Take care of Mia. Sarah stared at her name on the screen. She had never told him her name. Dizziness washed over her. She pressed a hand to her mouth, nausea rising. How did he know? Across the river, Vinny set the phone down. His chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped steel bands around his ribs. He walked to the bar cart, poured 2 fingers of bourbon, stared at the amber liquid without drinking. A child named Mia. A mother named Sarah. A wrong number on the worst night of the year. He didn't believe in fate. Men like him didn't survive by believing in anything but leverage and consequences. Yet something about this felt like a door cracking open after years of being nailed shut. He picked up the phone again. Hope you and Mia get some rest tonight. He sent it, then turned off the screen. In Queens, Sarah read the message through blurred vision. She didn't reply. She simply pulled Mia closer, buried her face in her daughter's hair, and let the sobs come quiet, racking the kind that hurt all the way down to the bone. Outside, the rain kept falling, indifferent to the small miracles and larger shadows beginning to gather around them both. The rain had not let up. It drummed against the thin roof of the apartment building like someone upstairs was trying to pound their way through. Inside 4C, the single bulb flickered once, twice, threatening to die. Sarah Thompson sat motionless on the mattress edge, knees drawn to her chest, arms wrapped tight around them as if she could hold herself together that way. The notification from Venmo still glowed on the cracked screen beside her, $500 deposited. Confirmed, irrevocable. She stared at the amount until the numbers blurred. $500. Enough for oat milk, enough for heat, enough for groceries that weren't dented cans from the food pantry, enough to breathe for a month, maybe 2. Her hands shook so violently she had to press them between her thighs to still them. Gratitude and terror collided inside her ribcage, sharp as broken glass. Who was this? Vinny? Why her? Why now? The questions circled like vultures, each one tearing a fresh strip from the fragile wall she had built around her heart. Mia stirred, small fingers twitching in sleep. Sarah reached out instinctively, smoothing the dark hair back from her daughter's forehead. The skin felt too warm, feverish perhaps, or maybe that was just Sarah's own panic radiating outward. She leaned down, pressed her cracked lips to Mia's temple and whispered, "It's going to be okay, baby. Mommy's going to fix this." The words tasted like a lie. She had said them before, after the eviction notice, after the last paycheck bounced, after the night she walked 3 miles home in sleet because the subway fare was gone. Each time the promise grew thinner, more transparent. She picked up the phone again. The cursor blinked in the reply box. "This is way too much. I can't accept this." She deleted it. Typed again. "Thank you. I don't know what to say." She hit send before doubt could strangle the words. In Dumbo, Vinnie Moretti stood motionless in the center of the penthouse living room. The space was vast, polished concrete floors, black leather furniture that cost more than most people earned in a decade, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the rain-smeared lights of Manhattan. A gas fireplace burned low behind smoked glass, casting long amber shadows across the room. On the marble coffee table sat a single-framed photograph, a little girl with braids, and a gap-toothed smile, frozen forever at 7. Vinny had not looked at the photo tonight. He could not bear to. He held his phone in one hand, thumb hovering over the screen. The reply from Sarah had arrived minutes ago. Simple, grateful, terrified. He felt it like a physical blow. He set the phone down carefully, too carefully, and walked to the window. Rain streaked the glass in relentless vertical lines. His reflection stared back, a man who controlled blocks of Brooklyn, who could summon a crew with one call, who had buried enemies and friends alike. A man who had not cried since the night Sophia died. Yet tonight his throat burned. He spoke aloud, voice rough. "What the hell are you doing, Vinny?" No answer came. Only rain. He returned to the phone, typed, "You're welcome, Sarah. Take care of Mia." He sent it, then immediately regretted the use of her name. He had pulled it from a quick search after the first message, public records, nothing invasive. Still, it felt like trespassing. He paced to the bar, poured bourbon again, stared into the glass. Memories clawed upward unbidden. Sophia's laughter echoing through the old brownstone in Carroll Gardens, her small hand in his as they crossed the street, the way she used to call him Daddy Vinny, even after he told her just Daddy was enough. Then the crack of gunfire, the red bloom across her chest, the way her eyes searched for him in the chaos and found nothing but absence. He slammed the glass down. Liquid sloshed over the rim. Across the city, Sarah read the reply, her name in black letters. A stranger who knew too much. Panic surged hot and dizzying. She stood too quickly. The room tilted. She caught herself on the wall, palm-slapping, plaster breath coming in shallow gasps. How did he know? Had she said it? Had she typed it somewhere? Her mind raced backward through every message, every word. She sank back down, legs folding beneath her. Mia murmured in her sleep, turning toward the sound. Sarah gathered her daughter close, rocking slowly, the motion, instinctive, soothing for them both. I'm scared, she whispered into Mia's hair. But I think he might be kind. The admission felt dangerous. Kindness was a luxury she had long ago learned to distrust. Outside tires hissed on wet asphalt. A black SUV idled at the curb 3 blocks away. Vinny's crew running routine surveillance on a rival crew that had been pushing into Astoria. The driver, a thick-necked man named Tony, glanced at his phone, a text from Vinny. Keep eyes open tonight. Something's off. Tony frowned, scanned the dark street. Nothing moved except rain and shadows. Back in Dumbo, Vinny's phone buzzed again. Not Sarah. Unknown caller. A voice message. He played it on speaker. A low-accented voice, Russian, maybe Eastern European. Moretti. You think you can keep Astoria clean? We're coming for the waterfront. Tell your boys to step aside or we start collecting in blood. Vinny deleted the message without replying. Threats were currency in his world. Cheap. Predictable. But tonight they landed differently. He thought of a little girl in Queens who needed milk. Thought of a mother who typed "thank you" with trembling fingers. Thought of how easily the world could crush someone so small. He grabbed his coat, black cashmere lined with silk, and headed for the private elevator. The rain hit him like needles as he stepped onto the street. His driver waited, engine running. Vinny slid into the back seat. Queens, he said. Jamaica Avenue area. Discreet. The driver raised an eyebrow in the rear view but said nothing. They drove through the night, windshield wipers sweeping arcs of water. Vinny stared out at the blurred city fists clenched on his thighs. Guilt gnawed, deeper guilt for Sophia, guilt for every choice that had led him here, guilt now for this inexplicable pull toward a stranger's child. He did not know why he was going. To see for himself, to confirm she was real, to make sure no one else had seen the messages and decided to use them, or because, for the first time in 8 years, something felt like it mattered. The SUV slowed near the rundown block. Vinny spotted the building peeling paint graffiti tags, half scrubbed away, a flickering neon sign in the downstairs bodega window, advertising lottery tickets and cigarettes. He told the driver to circle once, then park a block over. He stepped out into the downpour, collar up, hands in pockets. Rain soaked through his shoes in seconds. He walked past the entrance, glanced up at the 4th-floor windows. One light still burned weak and yellow. Inside 4C, Sarah had not moved. She sat holding Mia, rocking gently, staring at nothing. The phone lay silent now. She wondered if the money would vanish by morning like everything else in her life. A soft knock sounded at the door. Sarah froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Another knock, gentle, almost hesitant. She eased Mia down onto the blankets, pulled the thin sheet over her, then crept to the door. She pressed her eye to the peephole. A man stood in the hallway, tall, broad-shouldered, fair-skinned, silver at the temples. Rain dripped from his coat onto the cracked linoleum. He looked directly at the peephole as though he knew she was watching. "Sarah," he said quietly. His voice carried through the thin door. "It's Vinny. I'm not here to hurt you. I just needed to make sure you were okay." Sarah's knees buckled. She caught the door frame, breath ragged. Horror and confusion crashed together. He was here, in her building, at her door. She whispered through the wood, voice trembling. "How did you find me?" A pause. "Your area code. The message. I know people. I didn't look far." She pressed her forehead to the door. "You shouldn't be here. I know." His voice cracked just once, barely audible. "But I couldn't stay away. Not tonight." Sarah's hand hovered over the chain. Every instinct screamed to send him away. Every exhausted, desperate fiber of her being wanted to believe. She slid the chain free. The door opened a crack. Vinny stood there, rain-soaked eyes shadowed. He did not step forward. He simply looked at her, really looked, and something in his expression fractured. Sarah stared back, thin, shivering eyes wide with fear and fragile hope. Neither spoke. Behind her, Mia coughed once, small, painful. Vinny's gaze shifted past Sarah to the sleeping child. His throat worked. He looked away, blinking hard. "I'll go," he said hoarsely. "I just needed to see you were safe." Sarah's voice came out small, broken. "Wait." He stopped. She stepped back, opening the door wider. Not an invitation inside. Just acknowledgement. "Thank you," she whispered. "For the money. For caring." Vinny nodded once. Rain dripped from his hair onto the threshold. "Take care of her," he said. "Both of you." Then he turned and walked away down the dim hallway, shoulders rigid, fists clenched at his sides. Sarah closed the door softly. She leaned against it, sliding down until she sat on the floor. Tears came again, silent, endless. Outside, Vinny reached the street. He paused under the awning of the bodega, lit a cigarette with shaking hands. The flame illuminated his face for a moment, a man torn between worlds, between guilt and something dangerously close to redemption. He exhaled smoke into the rain. Across the street, another black SUV idled different plates. Watching, Vinny's eyes narrowed. He flicked the cigarette away, stepped into the downpour, and disappeared into the night. In the apartment, Sarah crawled back to Mia, gathered her close, and held on as though the child were the only solid thing left in the world. The rain kept falling, and somewhere between Queens and Dumbo, two broken hearts began against every rule, every reason to reach toward each other. The next morning dawned gray and unforgiving. October 2025 had settled into a cold, damp permanence in Queens. Sarah Thompson woke to the sound of Mia's shallow breathing and the distant rumble of garbage trucks on the street below. She had not slept more than fragments, 30 minutes here, 20 there. Her body curled protectively around her daughter on the thin mattress. The $500 sat untouched in her Venmo account like something forbidden. She had checked the balance 3 times in the night, half expecting it to vanish. She rose slowly, joints aching from the cold that seeped through the floorboards. The radiator had stopped hissing sometime after midnight. Now it stood silent and useless, a rusted monument to broken promises. Sarah pulled on the same hoodie, the fabric stiff from dried sweat and rain. Her reflection in the cracked mirror above the sink showed hollow cheeks, shadowed eyes, hair matted from restless turning. She looked older than her 31 years, worn thin like a garment washed too many times. Mia stirred, small voice cracking the quiet. "Mommy, throat hurts." Sarah knelt beside her hand, gentle on the fever-hot forehead. "I know, baby. We're going to fix it today. I promise." The word promise tasted like ash. She had said it so often it had lost shape. She dressed Mia in the only clean outfit left, a faded pink sweatshirt 2 sizes too big, and leggings with a hole at the knee, then bundled her into the threadbare coat that no longer zipped all the way. The walk to the corner store was only 4 blocks, but it felt like miles. Wind sliced through the thin fabric, stinging Sarah's cheeks. She carried Mia on her hip when the girl's legs gave out halfway, the child's weight both comfort and burden. At the bodega, the clerk, a man who never smiled, watched her count out coins for a single carton of oat milk. The special kind cost $12.79. She had to borrow $3 from the change jar she kept hidden under the sink. The clerk rang it up without comment, eyes flicking over her thin frame, then away. Back in the apartment, Sarah poured the milk into a sippy cup with shaking hands. Mia drank greedily, color returning to her cheeks in slow degrees. Sarah watched, tears pricking her eyes. Relief and shame warred inside her. Relief that her daughter could breathe easier. Shame that it had taken a stranger's money to make it happen. Her phone buzzed on the milk crate. Unknown number. "Vinny. Hope Mia's feeling better this morning." Did the milk help? Sarah stared at the message. Part of her wanted to delete it, block him, pretend last night had been a dream. Another part, the exhausted, cornered part, typed back slowly. "Yes. She's drinking it now. Thank you again." She hit send, and immediately regretted the softness in her words. Vulnerability was dangerous. She knew that. The reply came within seconds. "Good. I meant what I said, no strings. But if you ever need anything else, I'm here." Sarah's thumb hovered. Suspicion coiled tight in her chest. Men like this, wealthy, powerful, appearing out of nowhere, did not help without wanting something in return. Yet his words carried no demand, no edge. She typed nothing. Set the phone down. Across the river, Vinny Moretti sat in the back of his black Escalade as it crawled through morning traffic on the Brooklyn Bridge. The city unfolded below in a haze of steel and glass, indifferent to the storm inside him. He wore a charcoal overcoat over a tailored navy suit, cufflinks glinting like small blades in the weak sunlight. His driver glanced in the rearview once, then away. Tony knew better than to ask questions when Vinny's face looked like thunder. Vinny stared at his phone. Sarah's last message, short, grateful, guarded, had lodged somewhere deep in his chest. A splinter he could not pull free. He thought of Sophia again, the way she used to text him silly emojis from school when she was supposed to be paying attention. The memory stabbed fresh as the day it happened. He exhaled sharply, pocketed the phone. The Escalade turned onto a side street in Williamsburg. Ahead, 3 men in leather jackets leaned against a chain-link fence bordering a vacant lot, territory markers for the Eastern European crew that had been testing boundaries. One of them, a tall blonde with a scar across his cheek, straightened as the SUV approached. Vinny signaled the driver to stop. He stepped out alone, coat open, hands visible. No weapon in sight. The message was clear. This was conversation, not confrontation. The blonde man smirked. "Moretti, you're a long way from Brooklyn." Vinny stopped 10 feet away. "You sent a message last night." "I'm here to answer it in person." The man's companions shifted hands near waists. Vinny ignored them. "You want the waterfront," Vinny continued, voice low even. "You can't have it. Not without blood. And I'm tired of blood." The blonde laughed once. "You think you can talk your way out? We've got friends in high places now. Cops. Judges. You're yesterday's news. Vinny's jaw tightened. Inside, something roared rage at the arrogance, grief at the endless cycle, guilt that every inch of ground he held had been paid for in lives, including Sophia's. He stepped closer. Walk away. Take your crew back across the river, or the next conversation won't be this polite. The blonde's smile faded. He studied Vinny's eyes, saw the storm there, and nodded once slow, reluctant. We'll see. Vinny turned, walked back to the Escalade without looking behind him. The engine roared as they pulled away. Back in Queens, Sarah had spent the morning cleaning the apartment, wiping counters with a rag that had once been a towel, sweeping crumbs that weren't there, anything to keep her hands busy. The money sat heavy in her mind. She could not bring herself to spend more than the milk. Her phone buzzed again. I know this is sudden, but I have a legitimate business, construction management in Brooklyn. We need someone for admin work. Bookkeeping, filing, light office duties. Flexible hours. Pays fair. On-site space for Mia if you need it. Sarah read the message twice, then 3 times. Her heart slammed against her ribs. A job. A real job. Not waiting tables, not begging for shifts. Something steady. Suspicion surged again, cold and sharp. Why her? Why now? She typed back, fingers trembling. Why are you doing this? The reply was almost immediate. Because I remember what it's like to lose someone you couldn't protect. And because Mia deserves better than an empty fridge. Sarah's breath caught. The words landed like a hand on her shoulder, gentle but impossible to shrug off. She looked at Mia, now sitting on the floor, coloring with the stub of a crayon she had found under the couch. The girl hummed softly, small tongue between her teeth in concentration. Sarah typed slowly. I'd like to hear more. But I need to know this is real. No tricks. Come to the office tomorrow. 10 in the morning. Bring Mia. I'll send the address. Sarah stared at the screen. The room seemed to tilt. Dizziness washed over her. Exhaustion, hunger, fear, hope, all crashing together. She gripped the edge of the milk crate to steady herself. She whispered to the empty air, "What am I doing?" No answer came. That afternoon, the landlord knocked. Loud. Insistent. Sarah opened the door, a crack chain on. "Rent's late again, Thompson. 3 days. You got it." Sarah's voice came out small. "I'm working on it. I swear." "Friday," the man snorted. "You said that last month." "And the month before. I got people waiting for this unit. Pay up or you're out." He walked away before she could reply. Sarah closed the door, slid down it until she sat on the floor. Tears came hot and fast. She pressed her palms to her eyes, trying to hold them in. Mia crawled over small arms wrapping around her neck. "Don't cry, Mommy." Sarah pulled her close, rocking slowly. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." Across the city, Vinny sat in his office, a converted warehouse in Red Hook with exposed brick walls, high ceilings, and a view of the harbor. The space was clean, professional, mahogany desk, leather chairs, a corner play area he had ordered set up that morning, crayons, paper, a small table, and chairs. No one had questioned it. No one dared. He stared at the photo on his desk, Sophia laughing Forever 7. He touched the frame once, fingers lingering. "I'm trying, kid," he whispered. "I'm trying to do something right." His phone buzzed. "Sarah? Okay. 10 tomorrow. Thank you." Vinny exhaled long and slow. Something cracked open inside him, small, painful, hopeful. He typed back one word. "Good." Outside, the wind picked up off the water, rattling the windows. Inside, 2 worlds, one of desperate scarcity, one of shadowed power, began inch by fragile inch to draw closer, and the tearing in both hearts grew deeper still. The morning of October 10th, 2025 broke with a brittle chill that seeped through every crack in the Queen's apartment. Sarah Thompson stood before the cracked mirror, trying to make herself presentable. She had washed the gray hoodie in the sink the night before, wrung it out by hand, and hung it over the radiator to dry. It still smelled faintly of damp and desperation, but it was the cleanest thing she owned. She brushed Mia's hair with careful strokes, tying it back with a frayed ribbon she had salvaged from an old birthday card. Mia watched her mother in the mirror, small face, solemn. "You look pretty, Mommy." Sarah managed a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Thank you, baby. You too." She had not eaten breakfast. There was nothing left but half a sleeve of crackers, and the last of the oat milk. She gave Mia the final portion in a sippy cup, watching her daughter drink with the quiet concentration of someone who had learned too young that food could disappear. The subway ride to Brooklyn took nearly an hour. Sarah held Mia on her lap the entire way, the child's head resting against her chest. The car rattled and swayed. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Sarah's stomach knotted with every station announcement. She had never been to this part of Brooklyn. Red Hook felt like another city entirely, warehouses and cobblestone streets giving way to sleek new developments. When they emerged from the station, the wind off the harbor cut through her thin coat like knives. The address Vinny had sent led to a converted warehouse on Van Brunt Street. The exterior was brick and steel understated, but immaculate black metal doors, brass plaques reading Moretti Construction and Management. Sarah hesitated at the entrance, heart hammering. Mia clutched her hand tighter. "Mommy, are we going inside?" Sarah swallowed. "Yes, sweetheart, just for a little while." She pushed the door open. The lobby was warm, shockingly so, after the cold outside. Polished concrete floors, exposed brick walls softened by modern lighting, a reception desk of dark wood. A woman in her 50s, elegant in a cream blouse and navy skirt, rose from behind the desk. "Miss Thompson," Sarah nodded, voice small. "Yes." "Sarah. And this is Mia." The woman Martha, her name tag read, smiled gently. "Mr. Moretti is expecting you. Right this way." They followed her down a wide hallway lined with framed architectural drawings and photographs of completed projects, bridges, office buildings, community centers. No hint of anything shadowy. Just legitimate success. Martha led them to a corner suite at the end of the hall. The door stood open. Inside, sunlight poured through tall windows overlooking the harbor. A mahogany desk dominated one side. On the other, a small conference area had been transformed. A child-sized table and chairs sat near the window, stocked with crayons, construction paper, coloring books, a basket of soft toys. A portable crib stood folded in the corner, a soft blanket draped over it. A mini fridge hummed quietly beside a coffee station. Sarah stopped in the doorway, breath-catching. Vinny stood near the window, hands in his trouser pockets back to them at first. When he turned, the morning light caught the silver at his temples, the faint lines around his eyes. He wore a charcoal suit today, no tie sleeves rolled to the forearms. His gaze went first to Mia, then to Sarah. "Sarah," he said quietly. "Mia." Mia peeked from behind her mother's leg, curious but shy. Sarah's voice came out barely above a whisper. This is too much." Vinny shook his head once. "It's just a room. Nothing more." Martha excused herself with a soft murmur. The door clicked, closed behind her. Sarah remained rooted in place. The disparity hit her like a physical force, the gleaming hardwood, the scent of fresh coffee, the view of yachts bobbing in the distance, while her own apartment still smelled of mildew and cold. She felt exposed, humiliated, her thin frame, and worn clothes suddenly glaringly out of place. Vinny seemed to sense it. He gestured to the small table. "Mia, would you like to color? There's a new set of markers over there." Mia looked up at Sarah for permission. Sarah nodded numbly. The girl tiptoed forward, then sat picking up a blue crayon with careful fingers. Vinny turned back to Sarah. "Sit, please. You look like you're about to fall over." She did legs folding beneath her onto the leather chair. Her hands trembled in her lap. "I don't understand," she said softly. "Why all this? Why me?" Vinny leaned against the edge of his desk, arms crossed, not defensive but containing something restless inside him. "I told you last night. I remember what it feels like to fail someone who depended on you. I couldn't save my daughter. Maybe I can help save yours." The admission landed heavily. Sarah's eyes widened. "You had a daughter, had." The word came out rough. "She was 7, same age as Mia. Drive-by, 8 years ago. I was too late." Silence stretched between them, thick with shared pain and vast difference. Sarah's throat closed. "I'm so sorry." Vinny looked away, jaw tight. "Don't be. Just let me do this. The job is real. 40 hours a week, flexible for Mia. $25 an hour to start. Health benefits after 30 days. No questions about your past. No expectations beyond the work." Sarah stared at the floor. $25 an hour. More than double what the diner paid. Enough to eat. Enough to heat the apartment. Enough to stop counting every penny like it might be the last. But trust did not come easily. She lifted her gaze. "And if I say no," Vinny's expression did not change, "then you walk out. The money from yesterday stays yours. No debt. No obligation." Sarah searched his face. No smirk, no hidden agenda in the eyes. Just quiet, bone-deep weariness. She whispered, "Okay." Vinny exhaled a sound so small it might have been imagination. "Good." He showed her the desk that would be hers, dual monitors, ergonomic chair, a stack of files labeled with neat handwriting. Simple tasks at first, organizing invoices, reconciling receipts, basic data entry. Nothing she could not handle. As they spoke, Mia began to hum softly while coloring. Vinny glanced over once, twice. Each time, something in his posture softened. Sarah noticed. "She likes drawing. Always has." Vinny nodded. "Sophia did too. Used to cover the fridge with pictures of us together. The name hung in the air, Sophia, a ghost between them." Sarah's voice trembled. "Mia, She reminds you of her. Vinny did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was low. Yes. And no. Mia's alive. That's the difference. The words tore at Sarah's chest. She looked at her daughter's safe, warm coloring in a room that felt like a dream, and felt the first crack in her suspicion. Not trust yet, but the beginning of something warmer. Outside, the day moved on. Vinny excused himself for a meeting. Sarah settled at the desk, hands shaking as she opened the first file. The numbers swam at first, exhaustion, hunger, disbelief, but slowly they sharpened. She worked. An hour later, Vinny returned. He carried a paper bag from a nearby deli, turkey, sandwiches, fresh fruit, bottled water, a small carton of oat milk for Mia. Sarah froze. You didn't have to, I know. He set the bag down. Eat. Both of you. Mia looked up, eyes wide at the sight of grapes, real grapes, plump and purple. Sarah's throat closed again. She handed one to her daughter, watched her eat with slow wonder. Vinny watched, too silent. Later, as the afternoon light slanted golden across the room, Sarah glanced up from her screen. Vinny sat at his desk, staring out the window. His shoulders were rigid fists clenched on the blotter. She saw it then, the tremor in his hands, the way he breathed too carefully. She spoke softly. Are you okay? He did not turn. I will be, but the lie hung between them, fragile as glass. Outside on the street below, two men in dark jackets lingered near a delivery van. One spoke into a phone, eyes on the warehouse windows. Vinny's gaze flicked downward once narrowed. He reached for his own phone, sent a single text. Eyes open. Company. He set the phone down, turned back to Sarah and Mia. The child had finished her drawing, a simple picture of 3 stick figures holding hands. She carried it over to Vinny, small feet silent on the hardwood. For you, she said shyly. Vinny took it. The figures, one tall, one medium, one small, all smiling. He stared at it for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice cracked. Thank you, Mia. Sarah watched the exchange, heart twisting violently. Suspicion still lingered, but something fiercer burned beneath it. Gratitude so deep it hurt, attachment so sudden it terrified her. Vinny looked up, met her eyes. No words passed between them. None were needed. The harbor wind rattled the windows. Inside, 3 broken pieces of the same shattered world began quietly, impossibly to fit together, and the tearing inside each of them deepened, raw, relentless, and strangely, achingly alive. By the end of the first week, the warehouse office on Van Brunt Street had begun to feel less like a borrowed dream and more like a fragile reality. October 17, 2025. The harbor wind still carried salt and chill, but inside Vinny Moretti's suite the air stayed warm, scented faintly with coffee, and the clean paper smell of fresh printouts. Sarah Thompson arrived each morning at 8:45, Mia's small hand in hers, the child now carrying a little backpack. Vinny had quietly left on her table blue with a cartoon whale on the front. Inside were snacks, granola bars, apple slices, a juice box, things Sarah could never have afforded without shame. Sarah had gained 3 pounds in 7 days. Not much, but enough that her cheeks looked less hollow, her hands steadier when she typed. She slept 4, sometimes 5 hours a night, now unbroken stretches that felt like luxury. The radiator in the Queen's apartment still barely worked, but she could afford space heaters now, and the landlord had stopped knocking after the first partial payment. Yet every time she accepted another small kindness from Vinny, a coat for Mia from a boutique downtown, a hot lunch delivered to the office, she felt the old humiliation rise like bile. She was still the woman who had begged from a stranger, still the one who counted quarters for laundry. She worked quietly at her desk, reconciling vendor invoices, flagging small discrepancies that most people would have overlooked. The numbers were clean on the surface, legitimate construction contracts, union dues, material costs, but beneath them lay patterns Sarah's trained eye could not ignore. Payments to shell companies that never delivered goods, invoices for equipment that did not match site photos, amounts rounded in ways that suggested skimming. She said nothing at first. Suspicion toward Vinny still lingered, a thin thread of wariness. But the man who sat across the room answering calls in low tones, glancing at Mia with something close to reverence, did not seem like someone hiding theft. Mia had grown bolder. She no longer hid behind Sarah's legs. She drew pictures for Vinny almost daily, stick figure families' boats on the water, once a tall man holding a little girl's hand. Vinny kept everyone, taping them carefully to the wall behind his desk where no one else could see. Sarah watched him do it one afternoon when he thought she was focused on her screen. His fingers lingered on the paper, tracing the crayon lines. His shoulders rose and fell in a silent breath. She looked away, throat tight. That same afternoon, the door opened without a knock. A man stepped in, mid-40s, broad through the shoulders, dark hair slicked back, expensive watch glinting under the recessed lights. Marco Rossi, Vinny's second-in-command for the legitimate side of the business. His smile was wide, but did not touch his eyes. "Boss," he said, nodding to Vinny. Then his gaze slid to Sarah. "And the new hire?" Thompson Wright. Sarah stiffened. "Yes." Marco stepped closer to her desk, leaning in just enough to crowd her space. "Heard you've been digging through the books. Find anything interesting?" Sarah's pulse jumped. She kept her voice even. "Just doing the job I was hired for." Marco chuckled low. "Careful, sweetheart. Some things aren't meant to be found." Vinny's chair scraped back. He stood slowly, presence filling the room like a gathering storm. "Marco. Outside." Marco straightened, smile fading. He glanced at Mia, who had stopped coloring and watched with wide eyes, then back at Sarah. "Nice setup you got here. Real cozy." He walked out. Vinny followed, closing the door behind him with deliberate softness. Sarah exhaled shakily. Mia crawled into her lap without a word, small arms wrapping around her neck. Sarah held her tight, rocking gently, whispering, "It's okay, baby. It's okay." But it was not okay. The encounter left a cold knot in her stomach. Marco's tone had carried threat, not loud, not crude, but unmistakable. She stared at the screen, numbers blurring. Fear coiled with confusion. Was Vinny protecting her, or using her? The line had grown impossibly thin. Outside in the hallway, Vinny faced Marco near the freight elevator. No witnesses, no cameras in this stretch. Marco leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You're getting soft, Vinny. Bringing in strays, letting her poke around the books. She's gonna find things." Vinny's voice stayed quiet, deadly quiet. "She already has. And if you've been careless enough to leave trails, that's on you." Marco's eyes narrowed. "You threatening me? I'm telling you to back off. She's not part of this world. She stays clean." Marco pushed off the wall, stepping close. "And if she doesn't, you gonna choose some waitress and her kid over the family?" Vinny did not blink. "Try me." Marco stared for a long beat, then laughed, once short, humorless. "You're playing with fire, boss. Hope she's worth it." He walked away. Vinny remained motionless until the elevator dinged and the doors closed. Only then did he let his hands unclench. His knuckles were white. Back inside, Sarah pretended to work. Mia had returned to her drawing, but her crayon moved slower now. Vinny re-entered, face carefully neutral. He sat at his desk without speaking. Sarah could not hold it in. She stood, walked to the window where Mia could not hear. Vinny joined her. "What was that about?" she asked softly. Vinny looked out at the harbor. "Business. Old business. He scared me." Vinny turned to her, then eyes dark with something raw. "He won't touch you. Or Mia. I swear it." Sarah searched his face. "Why do you care so much?" Vinny's jaw worked. He spoke so quietly she almost missed it. "Because every time I look at her, I see what I lost. And every time I look at you, I see what I could have saved if I'd been different." The confession hung between them, heavy and unguarded. Sarah felt it strike deep shock, then a fierce, aching warmth. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever seen her pain, and answered with their own. She whispered, "I don't know how to trust this." "I know," he said. "But I'm asking you to try." That evening, as Sarah and Mia prepared to leave, Vinny walked them to the door. He handed Sarah an envelope, cash for the week's pay plus extra for groceries. She tried to refuse. He shook his head. "Take it. For Mia." Sarah's eyes filled. She nodded once, unable to speak. Outside, the wind had picked up. They walked toward the subway. Halfway down the block, Sarah noticed a dark sedan idling at the curb. 2 men inside, watching. Her steps faltered. Mia tugged her hand. "Mommy," Sarah forced a smile. "It's okay, baby. Just cold." But her heart raced. She glanced back. The sedan pulled away slowly, taillights red in the dusk. Back in the office, Vinny stood alone at the window. He watched them disappear around the corner. Then he picked up his phone, dialed a number. "Tony, I need eyes on them. Discreet. And Marco, make sure he understands boundaries." He ended the call. Stared at the drawing on his wall, Mia's latest 3 figures under a big yellow sun. The tall one had silver hair. Vinny touched the paper once, fingers lingering. Inside his chest, the tearing grew wider, remorse for the past, fear for the present, a fierce burning need to protect what he had only just begun to reclaim. Across the city, Sarah tucked Mia into bed in the still chilly apartment. She sat on the mattress edge, watching her daughter sleep. The envelope of cash lay on the milk crate, real heavy, terrifying in its kindness. She whispered into the dark, "Please don't be a dream." But the fear lingered. Marco's words echoed. The watching car replayed in her mind. And somewhere between trust and terror, between gratitude and dread, Sarah felt the first true pull of attachment, not just for the safety Vinny offered, but for the broken man who offered it. The wind howled outside. Inside 2 separate worlds, hearts bled a little more, reaching blindly towards something neither could yet name. October 24th, 2025. The sky over Brooklyn had turned the color of bruised steel, low clouds pressing down on the city like a lid. Inside the Red Hook warehouse office, the air felt heavier than usual. Sarah Thompson sat at her desk, fingers hovering over the keyboard, but her eyes kept drifting to the discrepancies she had quietly compiled in a private spreadsheet. The patterns were no longer subtle. Repeated payments to a company called Harbor Supply Payments that matched no deliveries, no contracts, no site logs. The amounts were small individually, but over 6 months they totaled nearly $150,000. The shell company traced back to a single name, Marco Rossi. She had not told Vinny yet. Fear held her tongue. Marco's visit last week lingered like smoke in her lungs, his smile, his warning, the way he had looked at Mia. Sarah told herself she was waiting for more proof, for something undeniable. But deep down she knew the truth. She was afraid of what confirming it would mean. Afraid of losing this fragile sanctuary. Afraid of what it would do to the man who had given it to her. Mia played quietly in the corner, building a tower from wooden blocks Vinny had brought in the day before. The girl hummed a tune Sarah did not recognize, something soft, innocent. Every few minutes she glanced at Vinny, who sat at his desk pretending to review emails. His posture was rigid today, shoulders drawn tight, jaw set. Sarah had learned to read the small signs when he rubbed the scar on his forearm, when his gaze flicked to the window more often than usual, when he answered calls in clipped monosyllables. At 3:17 that afternoon, the storm broke. The door burst open without warning. 4 uniformed NYPD officers entered first, followed by 2 plainclothes detectives. One held a folded paper, a warrant, Sarah realized with a sick lurch. Behind them stood Marco Rossi, arms folded, expression calm and satisfied. Vinny rose slowly. "What is this?" The lead detective, a woman with short gray hair and tired eyes, stepped forward. "Alexander Vincent Moretti, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and money laundering. Step away from the desk." Sarah's chair scraped back. She stood, heart slamming so hard she felt it in her throat. Mia froze, mid-block, eyes wide. Vinny did not move. His voice stayed level. "You have the wrong man." Marco spoke, then smooth and regretful. "It's all there, Vinny. The accounts, the transfers, your signature on the approvals. Even the new hire helped flag them." He nodded toward Sarah. "Thanks for the extra set of eyes, Miss Thompson." Sarah's knees buckled. She caught the desk edge dizziness crashing over her in waves. "No," she whispered. "I didn't." The detective motioned to the officers. 2 moved toward Vinny, cuffs ready. He raised his hand slowly, eyes never leaving Marco's face. "You son of a Vinny," began voice low, lethal. Marco shrugged. "You got sloppy. Or maybe you got distracted." His gaze slid to Mia, then back to Sarah. "Hard to focus when you're playing house." Vinny lunged 1 step, 1 burst of motion, but the officers were faster. They grabbed his arms, twisted them behind him. Metal clicked. Vinny did not resist further, but his eyes burned into Marco's. Sarah felt the room spin. Numbness spread from her chest outward. She reached blindly for Mia, pulling the child behind her. "Stay back, baby. Stay back." One of the detectives approached her. "Miss Thompson, we'll need to speak with you. You're listed as a witness in the financial irregularities." Sarah's voice cracked. "I didn't do anything wrong. We'll sort it out downtown." Vinny twisted against the cuffs, voice urgent. "Sarah, get Mia out. Now." Martha appeared in the doorway, face pale but composed. She had clearly been waiting for this moment. She crossed the room quickly, hand extended to Sarah. "Come with me, both of you." Sarah hesitated, eyes locked on Vinny. He met her gaze, fierce, pleading, something raw and unguarded flashing across his face. "Go," he said. "Please." Tears blurred her vision. She nodded once numbly. Martha took Mia's hand, guided them toward a side door. Sarah had never noticed a narrow passage behind a bookshelf leading to a private stairwell. As they descended, Sarah heard the elevator ding, heard footsteps, heard Marco's low chuckle. "Take him, and make sure the kid's mother cooperates." The stairwell door closed behind them. The safe house was a modest brownstone in Cobble Hill, 3 stories narrow, unremarkable from the street. Inside it smelled of fresh paint and coffee. A small living room held a couch, a television, toys still in boxes. Martha moved with practiced efficiency, locking doors, drawing curtains, checking windows. Sarah sat on the couch, Mia in her lap, both trembling. The child pressed her face into her mother's neck. "Is the nice man coming back?" Mia whispered. Sarah's throat closed. "I don't know, baby." Martha knelt in front of them. "He will. He always does. But right now you're safe here. No one knows this place." Sarah looked up, eyes wet. "They said I'm a witness. They think I helped him steal." Martha's expression softened. "They think what Marco wants them to think. Vinny's been investigating him for months. Quietly. You found what he needed proof of. That's why Marco moved first, framed. Vinny dragged you in to discredit the evidence. Sarah's breath hitched. Vinny knew, he suspected. He hired you because you were clean. No ties. Sharp eyes. And because, Martha paused, because he couldn't stand by and watch another child suffer the way his did. Sarah buried her face in Mia's hair. Tears came hot and silent. The weight of it crushed her gratitude, betrayal, terror, guilt. She had begun to trust him to let the walls crack, and now the world had come crashing through. Outside, night fell fast. Vinny sat in the back of a squad car, wrists cuffed, staring out at the passing lights. The detectives had read him his rights. He had said nothing. His mind was elsewhere, on a small girl with dark hair, on a thin woman who looked at him like he might be salvation and damnation at once. They booked him at the precinct in Brooklyn. Fingerprints, mugshots, a holding cell with flickering fluorescent light. He sat on the metal bench, head in hands, replaying Marco's smirk, Sarah's stricken face, Mia's wide eyes. Remorse tore through him, vicious, unrelenting. He had brought them into this, protected them poorly, failed them the way he had failed Sophia. He whispered into the empty cell, voice breaking. "I'm sorry." Across the river, Sarah lay awake on the unfamiliar bed. Mia slept beside her small chest, rising and falling. Sarah stared at the ceiling, tears tracking silently into her hair. She thought of Vinny's voice, low, steady, promising safety. Thought of the drawings taped to his wall. Thought of the way he had looked at her in that final moment, not as a boss, not as a savior, but as a man afraid of losing something he had only just begun to hold. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the violent ache there. Trust had been growing slow, painful, real. Now it lay shattered, yet somehow still burning beneath the wreckage. She whispered into the dark, "Please be okay." Outside, a black SUV idled a block away. Tony sat behind the wheel, phone in hand. He texted one word, "Safe." In the holding cell, Vinny's phone, confiscated but monitored, lit up with the message. A guard glanced at it, then away. Vinny closed his eyes. The storm inside him raged on, guilt, fury, a fierce protective love that refused to die. And in two separate corners of the city, 3 hearts bled in silence, reaching across the distance, refusing to let go. Dawn crept through the brownstone curtains in thin, pale strips. Sarah Thompson had not slept. She sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, knees drawn to her chest, arms wrapped tight around them as though she could hold the pieces of herself together. Mia slept beside her small face, peaceful in the dim light, one hand curled near her mouth. The child had cried herself out the night before, quiet, hiccuping sobs that broke Sarah's heart more than any eviction notice ever had. Now Mia breathed evenly, trusting even in sleep. Sarah stared at the wall. The room was clean, warm, furnished with simple comfort, soft blankets, a nightlight shaped like a star, a small stack of children's books Martha had left on the dresser. Yet every inch of it felt borrowed, fragile, like it could vanish the moment she closed her eyes. She had spent the night replaying the raid, the cuffs on Vinny's wrists, Marco's cold smile, the detective's calm voice listing crimes that did not belong to the man she had begun to believe in. The betrayal cut deepest, not the accusation itself, but the way Marco had looked at her as though she were complicit in her own ruin. Her stomach twisted with hunger. She had eaten nothing since the sandwich Vinny brought yesterday afternoon. The kitchen downstairs held food, cereal, milk, fruit, but she could not bring herself to touch it. Taking more felt like theft. She was still the woman who counted crumbs, who watered down milk until it tasted like nothing, who knew the exact weight of shame in an empty refrigerator. A soft knock sounded at the bedroom door. Sarah startled, wiping her face quickly. "Come in." Martha entered, carrying a tray, toast, scrambled eggs, orange juice, a small bowl of oatmeal for Mia. The older woman set it on the dresser, then sat on the foot of the bed. Her eyes were kind but shadowed. "He's out," Martha said quietly. "Bail was posted at 4 this morning. He's safe. For now." Sarah's breath caught. Relief flooded her so violently she swayed. They let him go. His lawyer is one of the best. The evidence is circumstantial at best. Marco's fingerprints are all over the forged documents. Vinny's are nowhere near them. Sarah pressed a hand to her mouth. Tears welled again. "But they're still after him. And me." Martha nodded. "Marco's playing a dangerous game. He's trying to discredit Vinny before the real proof surfaces. You found it first. That makes you a threat." Sarah looked down at her hands, thin, trembling nails, bitten to the quick. "I never wanted this. I just wanted to keep Mia safe. I thought he was helping us." "He was," Martha said gently, "and he still is. He's asking to see you, both of you. There's a place, quiet, secure. He wants to explain everything." Sarah's heart lurched. Part of her wanted to run, take Mia, disappear into the city's shadows where no one would find them. Another part, the part that remembered Vinny's cracked voice when he spoke of his daughter, the way he kept Mia's drawings like sacred things, ached to believe. I'm scared, she whispered. I know, Martha said, but he's more scared. Of losing you. Of losing her. The words landed like stones in still water. Sarah closed her eyes, letting them sink deep. 2 hours later, they arrived at a nondescript office building in lower Manhattan, glass and steel, anonymous among dozens like it. Martha led them through a side entrance up a private elevator to the 12th floor. A single suite waited, plain carpet, plain walls, one long conference table. Vinny stood at the far end, back to the door, hands in his pockets. He wore the same suit from yesterday, creased now, collar open, sleeves rolled. When he turned, Sarah saw the bruise on his cheekbone, the exhaustion carved into every line of his face. He looked at Mia first. The girl clung to Sarah's leg, uncertain. Hey, kiddo, Vinny said softly. His voice cracked on the last word. Mia peeked up. Are you okay? Vinny managed a small, broken smile. I will be. Sarah stayed near the door, arms crossed tight over her chest. Her voice came out small. They said you're a criminal. Vinny did not flinch. I've done things. Bad things. But not this. Not the things they're accusing me of. He gestured to the table. Folders lay spread across it, printouts, bank statements, emails. Marco's been skimming for over a year. Small amounts. Unnoticeable at first. Then bigger. He framed me to cover his tracks. Used your work to make it look like I hired you to hide the theft. Sarah stepped forward slowly. She opened the top folder. Her own notes stared back at her discrepancies. She had flagged timelines she had built. Her handwriting looked foreign, now accusing. She looked up. You knew he was doing this, I suspected. That's why I brought you in. You were clean. Sharp. No connections to him. I needed someone I could trust. Trust, Sarah echoed. The word tasted bitter. You used me. Vinny's eyes darkened with pain. I used the opportunity. Not you. Never you. Silence stretched. Mia tugged Sarah's sleeve. Mommy, he looks sad. Sarah knelt, kissed her daughter's forehead. I know, baby. She stood again, facing Vinny. What happens now? Vinny exhaled. I have contacts. Federal contacts. They've been watching Marco for months. Your evidence is the piece they needed, but Marco knows it. He's desperate. That makes him dangerous. Sarah's knees weakened. She gripped the table edge. He'll come after us. He already tried. Vinny's voice dropped. Last night, 2 of his men followed Martha's car. My guys intercepted them. No shots, no blood, but they're closing in. Sarah felt the floor tilt. Dizziness swept over her, cold, numbing. She sank into a chair. Mia climbed into her lap, small arms wrapping tight. Vinny crouched in front of them. He looked at Mia first. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. I swear it on everything I have left. Mia reached out, touched the bruise on his cheek with careful fingers. Does it hurt? A little, he admitted. But seeing you makes it better. Sarah watched the exchange, heart tearing wider. The child's innocence pierced her simple trust, unearned but freely given. She felt it echo inside her own chest, the slow burning shift from suspicion to something fiercer, deeper. Attachment. Need. A desperate aching want to believe this man would keep his promise. Vinny turned to Sarah. I need you to meet someone. An agent. Keller. She's waiting in the next room. You show her what you found. Everything. It ends this. Sarah's breath shuddered. And if I do, then Marco goes away. For good. And you and Mia walk free. Safe. She searched his face. The exhaustion there, the guilt, the fierce protectiveness, it was all real. Painfully real. She whispered, okay. Vinny exhaled a sound of profound relief. He stood, offered his hand. Sarah took it. His palm was warm, calloused, steady. When their fingers linked, something inside her cracked open, trust rushing in like air after suffocation. Intense. Overwhelming. Terrifying in its power. They moved to the adjacent room. Agent Keller waited, mid-40s, sharp eyes, no-nonsense posture. She greeted Sarah with a firm handshake, then knelt to Mia's level. Hey there, I'm Keller. I'm here to help your friend Vinny. Mia nodded solemnly. He's nice. Keller smiled faintly. I know. Sarah sat. Spread the folders. Explained, voice trembling at first, then growing steadier. The patterns, the shell companies, the dates. Keller listened, took notes, asked precise questions. When Sarah finished, the agent leaned back. This is solid. Better than solid. We can move on Rossi within 48 hours. But we need Vinny at the meeting tomorrow. He has to draw Marco out. Make him overplay his hand. Sarah's stomach dropped. You're using him as bait. Keller's gaze was steady. He volunteered. Sarah looked at Vinny. He stood near the window, back straight, but his hands were clenched at his sides. She saw the war inside him, remorse for the life that had led here, fear for the child in the next room, a burning need to end this so Mia could grow up without shadows. She rose, crossed to him, stood close enough to feel the heat of his body. "You don't have to do this." "I do," he said quietly. "For her. For you." The words struck deep. Sarah felt tears rise again. She reached up, touched his bruised cheek with trembling fingers, the same gesture Mia had used. "Be careful." Vinny covered her hand with his, held it there. No words, just the weight of everything unspoken. Outside, the city moved on, cars, horns, wind off the river. Inside, 3 hearts beat in ragged rhythm, one small and trusting, one torn by guilt and redemption, one slowly learning that protection could feel like love without ever needing the name. And the tearing grew deeper, still raw, relentless, binding them tighter even as the storm closed in. The warehouse stood on the edge of the Brooklyn Navy Yard, abandoned brick and rusted iron windows, boarded with warped plywood, the air thick with the smell of old oil and salt water. Night had fallen early, the sky a low, unbroken slate. Floodlights from the construction company across the street cast long, harsh shadows across the cracked asphalt lot. Inside, folding chairs had been set in a rough circle around a long metal table. 20 men sat, waiting, captains, lieutenants, trusted soldiers of what had once been Vinnie Moretti's family. The air crackled with tension. No one spoke above a murmur. Vinnie entered alone. He wore a dark overcoat over a black sweater, no tie, no armor. His face was calm, but his hands stayed in his pockets to hide the tremor. The bruise on his cheekbone had darkened to purple. He walked to the head of the table and stood not sitting. Eyes followed him, some loyal, some calculating, some openly hostile. Marco Rossi arrived last. He strode in, flanked by 4 men, smile, easy posture relaxed. He took the seat opposite Vinny without invitation. Boss Marco said the word laced with mockery. "Good to see you out on bail. Must have cost a fortune." Vinny did not answer immediately. He let the silence stretch heavy and deliberate. "You called this meeting," Marco continued, leaning back. "So let's hear it. You gonna explain why the feds are crawling all over our books? Or why you've been playing house with a waitress and her kid instead of running the family?" Murmurs rippled through the room. Vinny raised one hand. The murmurs died. "I called you here to end this," Vinny said quietly. "No more games. No more lies. You've been stealing from the family for 18 months, $150,000, maybe more. You framed me to cover it. You threatened a woman and a child who had nothing to do with any of this." Marco laughed once short, sharp. "That's your story. You're gonna stand there and accuse me in front of everyone. With what proof? Some spreadsheets your little charity case cooked up." Vinny's gaze never wavered. "Proof's already with the authorities. They have everything. Bank records, emails, your signature on transfers you thought were buried." "It's over, Marco." The room stilled. Several men shifted in their seats, glancing between the two. Marco's smile faded slowly. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You think you can just walk in here and take it all back? After you got distracted, after you let some nobody and her brat turn you soft." Vinny's voice dropped lower. "I got distracted because I finally remembered what matters. Protecting people, not bleeding them dry." Marco stood abruptly. "You're done, Vinny. The family's moving on. With me." He nodded to his men. 2 drew weapons slowly, deliberately, barrels pointed at the floor but ready. The room tensed. Loyalists' stiffened hands inching toward coats. Vinny did not move. "You really want to do this here?" In front of everyone, Marco's eyes narrowed. "You leave me no choice." He raised his hand, the signal. The side door burst open. Sarah stepped through, First Agent Keller and 2 other federal agents behind her. Sarah held a thick folder against her chest like a shield. Her face was pale, eyes wide with terror, but she walked forward without hesitation. Mia was not with her. Martha had kept the child at the safe house, but Sarah's every step carried the weight of her daughter's safety. Marco froze. "You." Sarah stopped beside Vinny. She did not look at him. She could not. If she did, she would shatter. She opened the folder, voice trembling but clear. "These are the records. Every transfer. Every fake invoice. Every shell account. The pattern starts 3 weeks after Marco Rossi became operations manager. The money leads straight to him." She placed the pages on the table, one by one, methodical, unflinching. The room watched in stunned silence. Marco's face drained of color. "This is bullshit. She's lying. Agent Keller stepped forward. "We've corroborated it, Mr. Rossi. Wire transfers. Witness statements. Your own emails. You're under arrest." Marco lunged not at the agents but at Sarah. His hand shot out, fingers closing around her wrist in a bruising grip. You little Vinny moved faster than thought. He stepped between them, shoving Marco back with both hands. The force sent Marco stumbling into the table. Chairs scraped. Men rose. Marco came up, swinging a wild, desperate fist aimed at Vinny's face. Vinny blocked it, took the next punch on the shoulder, then drove his forearm into Marco's chest. No weapons, no blood, just raw, contained fury. The agents surged forward. One tackled Marco from behind, forcing him to the ground. Cuffs clicked. Marco thrashed, cursing face contorted with rage. Vinny stepped back, breathing hard. He turned to Sarah. She stood frozen wrist, still throbbing where Marco had grabbed it. Her eyes met Vinny's shock, relief, terror all crashing together. The room spun. She swayed. Vinny caught her elbow, gently steadying her. "You're okay," he murmured. "You're okay." She shook her head, tears spilling. I thought he was going to, I know." His voice cracked. "I know." The agents moved quickly. Marco was dragged out, still shouting threats that echoed down the corridor. The loyalists sat stunned, some nodding slowly as realization settled. The family had fractured. Now it would heal or die. Vinny guided Sarah to a chair. She sank into it, trembling violently. He knelt in front of her hands, hovering, not quite touching. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should never have let it get this far." Sarah looked at him, really looked. The bruise on his cheek, the exhaustion in his eyes, the fierce protectiveness that had never wavered. "You kept your promise," she whispered. "You kept us safe." Vinny's throat worked. "I almost didn't, but you did." She reached out slowly, hesitantly, and placed her hand on his. His fingers closed around hers, immediately warm and steady. The touch burned intense, overwhelming a lifeline in the chaos. Sarah felt the last wall inside her crumble. Trust poured through the breach, fierce and unstoppable. Attachment followed deep and aching, binding her to this man who had risked everything for a child who was not his, for a woman who had nothing to offer but gratitude and broken pieces. Vinny bowed his head, forehead resting against their joined hands. His shoulders shook once only, then stilled. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "I couldn't lose you," he said hoarsely. "Either of you." Sarah's tears fell freely now. "You won't." Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Federal vehicles pulled up, lights flashing blue and red across the brick walls. Inside, the room emptied slowly, men nodding to Vinny as they left silent acknowledgement that the old order had ended. Vinny helped Sarah to her feet. They walked out together side by side into the cold night air. The wind off the harbor cut sharp, but Sarah barely felt it. Vinny's arms stayed around her shoulders, protective, gentle, unyielding. In the safe house later, Mia ran to them the moment the door opened. She threw herself into Vinny's arms, first small legs wrapping around his waist. He lifted her easily, buried his face in her hair. "You're back," she whispered. "I'm back," he answered, voice thick. Sarah watched them, her daughter safe in the arms of a man who had once been a stranger, now something far deeper. Her heart tore one final time, wide open, raw, alive, with a love that needed no name, only presence. Vinny looked over Mia's head at Sarah. Their eyes met. No words. Just the quiet, condensed stillness of two people who had walked through fire and found each other on the other side. The city lights glittered beyond the window, distant, indifferent. Inside, 3 hearts beat as one small and trusting, wounded and redeemed, fragile and finally whole. The tearing had not ended. It had only changed shape into something fierce, protective, eternal. The safe house in Cobble Hill was quiet in the gray light of early morning. Rain tapped softly against the window panes, a gentle counterpoint to the storm that had raged inside them all the night before. Sarah Thompson sat at the small kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea she had not yet tasted. Steam rose in slow curls, blurring the edges of her vision. Mia slept in the next room, exhausted from the terror of the previous evening, her small body curled under blankets that still smelled faintly of new fabric softener. Sarah had barely slept. Her body ached with the deep, bone-weary fatigue of someone who had carried too much for too long. Yet now the weight felt different, lighter in some places, heavier in others. The raid, the confrontation, Vinny's arm around her shoulders. As they walked out of that warehouse, it replayed behind her eyes in endless loops. She felt the ghost of his hand on her elbow, steadying her when the world tilted. She felt the fierce press of his fingers around hers, the way he had bowed his head to their joined hands and let his shoulders shake. Those moments had cracked something open inside her, something she had kept locked away since the day Mia's father walked out and left them with nothing but bills and silence. The front door opened quietly. Vinny stepped inside, coat dripping, hair damp from the rain. He paused in the entryway, eyes finding Sarah immediately. He looked older in the soft light lines deeper around his mouth, shadows darker beneath his eyes. The bruise on his cheek had spread a mottled purple that made Sarah's chest tighten. He closed the door softly, hung his coat, walked to the table without speaking. He sat across from her. Neither moved for a long moment. Sarah spoke first, voice barely above a whisper. "They took him." "Marco. It's really over." Vinny nodded once. "Federal marshals have him. No bail this time." The evidence was airtight. Sarah exhaled shakily. Relief washed through her, followed immediately by a fresh wave of guilt. I almost believed him. When he said you were the one stealing. You had every reason to doubt me, Vinny interrupted gently. I brought you into a world you never asked for. I should have kept you farther away. Sarah looked down at the tea. You kept us alive. Vinny's hands rested on the table, palms up, open, vulnerable. I almost didn't. Silence fell again, thick and heavy. Rain drummed a steady rhythm against the glass. Sarah lifted her gaze. Last night, when you stepped in front of me, when Marco grabbed my wrist, you didn't hesitate. I couldn't, he said simply. Not with you, not with her. The words landed softly, but they struck deep. Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks, embarrassment, gratitude, something fiercer she could not yet name. She reached across the table, hesitated, then placed her hand over his. His skin was cool from the rain, knuckles still raw from the scuffle. He turned his hand palm up and laced their fingers together without a word. Sarah's breath caught. The touch burned quiet, steady, overwhelming in its simplicity. She had spent so many nights alone, cold wind whistling through cracks in the walls, counting the days until the next paycheck that might never come. She had learned to survive on scraps of hope, on the small warmth of Mia's body pressed against hers in sleep. Now this man, wealthy beyond anything she could imagine, powerful in ways that terrified her, sat holding her hand like it was the only thing anchoring him to the earth. Vinny spoke, first voice rough. There's something I need to tell you. Something I found out last night after they processed Marco. Sarah tensed. He reached into his coat pocket, withdrew a slim envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, official letterhead from a private laboratory. He slid it across the table. Sarah unfolded it slowly. Her eyes scanned the lines, DNA, results, probability, percentages, names, her own. Mia's. And Vincent Moretti. Her hand began to shake. The paper trembled. She read the conclusion twice, 3 times. 99.9% probability of paternity. The room tilted. Dizziness crashed over her, violent, disorienting. She gripped the table edge, breath coming in short gasps. Numbness spread from her fingertips inward. Her vision blurred with tears she had not felt coming. No, she whispered. No, that can't. Vinny's voice was low, almost broken. I didn't know. I swear to you, Sarah. I didn't know. She stared at the page. Memories flooded back 7 years earlier, a brief reckless night in a Brooklyn bar when she was 24, and lost when he was 41, and already carrying shadows she could not see. She had never told him her last name. She had left before dawn, certain he would never remember her face. She had discovered the pregnancy 2 months later, alone in a free clinic, terrified and determined. She had never looked for him, never wanted to drag a child into whatever world he lived in. Now the truth sat between them like a living thing, fragile, explosive, undeniable. Sarah's voice cracked. She's yours. Vinny closed his eyes. A single tear escaped, tracking down the bruise on his cheek. She's yours, he corrected softly. She's always been yours. I didn't know I had the right to be part of it. Sarah pressed the paper to her chest. Sobs rose quiet at first, then wrenching. She rocked forward, forehead to the table, shoulders shaking. Vinny stood, moved around the table, knelt beside her chair. He wrapped his arms around her carefully as though she might break. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair. I'm so damn sorry. Sarah turned into him, face buried against his shoulder. She clung to him, thin arms, trembling fingers, the desperate grip of someone who had carried everything alone for too long. All these years, I thought I was protecting her from you, from whatever world you lived in. And all along she was. Vinny held her tighter. His own tears fell silently into her hair. I lost one daughter. I thought that was my punishment. I thought I didn't deserve another chance. Then you texted the wrong number. Then Mia drew me pictures. Then I looked at her and saw everything I thought I'd never have again. Sarah pulled back just enough to look at him. Her face was streaked with tears, eyes red, but something fierce burned there, love, fear, wonder all at once. She's yours, she whispered again. She's always been yours. Vinny cupped her face gently, thumbs brushing away tears. And she's yours. Nothing changes that. Nothing ever will. They sat there on the kitchen floor, 2 broken people, one small miracle between them, holding each other as the rain fell outside. The disparity had never felt starker, his world of glass towers and quiet power, her world of leaking ceilings and empty cabinets. Yet in this moment the distance collapsed. Wealth meant nothing. Power meant nothing. Only the child sleeping in the next room mattered. Sarah whispered against his shoulder. What do we do now? Vinny pressed his lips to her temple. We tell her. When she's ready. We protect her. Together. No more secrets. No more running. Sarah nodded slowly. The tearing inside her had reached its deepest point, raw, exposed, agonizing, and yet it felt like healing, like something long broken was finally being set right. In the bedroom doorway, Mia appeared, hair tousled, eyes sleepy. She rubbed them with small fists. "Mommy, Mr. Vinny." Sarah wiped her face, quickly tried to smile. "We're here, baby." Mia padded across the floor in bare feet, climbed into Vinny's lap without hesitation. She wrapped her arms around his neck, laid her head on his shoulder. "You're crying," she said softly. Vinny's voice cracked. "Happy tears, kiddo." Mia looked at Sarah, then back at Vinny. She touched his cheek, the bruise, the tear track. "Don't be sad anymore." Vinny held her close eyes, meeting Sarah's over the top of Mia's head. "I'm not," he whispered. "Not anymore." Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle. Inside, 3 hearts beat in ragged, perfect rhythm, torn open, bleeding, finally beginning to mend. The revelation had shattered them both, but in the breaking, something stronger was forged, a family born of mistake and miracle, held together by love that needed no permission, no proof, only presence. And the tearing, deep, relentless, beautiful became the quiet promise of tomorrow. The safe house in Cobble Hill had begun to feel like a fragile bubble, warm, protected, but thin enough to burst at the slightest pressure. Sarah Thompson woke before dawn, heart already racing from dreams she could not quite remember. Mia slept beside her, small hand curled against Sarah's side, breathing slow and even. The child had started calling Vinny Mr. Vinny with a shy smile that made Sarah's chest ache every time. Last night's revelation still sat heavy between them. DNA results folded away in a drawer, unspoken words hanging in the air like smoke. Sarah had not told Mia yet. She did not know how. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that the kind man who brought crayons and hugged her goodnight was her father Vinny had left at midnight with quiet instructions to Martha, stay inside, doors locked, no exceptions. He had kissed Mia's forehead, then looked at Sarah, long searching eyes full of things he could not yet say. "I'll be back before morning," he promised. Sarah had nodded, throat too tight for words. She had watched him disappear into the raincoat collar, up shoulders rigid against the wind. Now the house was silent, except for the soft drip of a leaky faucet in the kitchen. Sarah rose, wrapped herself in one of the thick robes Martha had provided, soft terry cloth that smelled faintly of lavender, and padded barefoot to the living room. She sat on the couch, knees drawn up, staring at the dark window. The city outside felt distant, unreal. She thought of her old apartment in Queens, the cracked ceiling, the cold that seeped through the walls, the nights she had held Mia close to share body heat because the radiator had given up. She thought of the humiliation of counting change for milk, of smiling at customers who left no tip while her stomach growled. That life had been real. This one safe, warm, cared for, still felt like a dream she might wake from at any moment. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Sarah." Vinny's voice, low, urgent, strained. "Listen carefully. Marco's out. Technicality. Corrupt judge. He's coming for us." Sarah's heart slammed against her ribs. "What he knows about the safe house. I'm on my way, but you need to move. Now. Martha has a car in the garage. Go to the secondary location, the brownstone in Park Slope. I'll meet you there." Sarah stood so quickly the room tilted. "Mia, take her. Don't pack. Just go." The line went dead. Horror flooded her, cold, paralyzing. She ran to the bedroom, shook Mia gently awake. "Baby, we have to leave. Right now." Mia blinked, sleepily confused. Why? Sarah forced calm into her voice. "It's a game. We're playing hide and seek with Mr. Vinny. Come on." Martha appeared in the doorway, already dressed, keys in hand. "He called me too. Let's move." They slipped down the back stairs to the garage. A small black sedan waited, engine running. Sarah buckled Mia into the booster seat, hands shaking so badly the buckle slipped twice. The child clutched her stuffed whale, the one Vinny had given her, eyes wide but trusting. They pulled out into the alley. Rain sheeted across the windshield. Martha drove fast, eyes scanning mirrors. Sarah twisted to look back. Headlights appeared too close, too fast. "Hold on," Martha said. The car accelerated. The pursuing vehicle matched speed. Sarah's stomach dropped. "They're following us." Martha took a sharp turn onto a side street. The other car followed. Horns blared. Mia whimpered. Sarah reached back, squeezed her daughter's hand. "It's okay, baby. We're okay." But she was not okay. Fear clawed up her throat, fear for Mia, fear for Vinny, fear that everything she had only just begun to believe in would be ripped away again. Martha's phone rang. She answered on speaker. Vinny's voice, breathless, furious. "They cut me off on the bridge. I'm heading to the pier instead. Get to Park Slope. I'll draw them away." Sarah leaned toward the phone. "Vinny, I love you both," he said. Tell her I'm coming back." The call ended. Sarah pressed her hand to her mouth. Tears came hot and fast. "Love." He had said it quiet, certain, final. The word burned through her, passionate, intense, terrifying in its truth. She had never heard it spoken like that, not as demand, not as pity, but as vow. Martha floored the accelerator. They lost the tail after 3 more turns. The brownstone in Park Slope was dark when they arrived. Martha ushered them inside, locked the doors, drew blinds. Sarah carried Mia to the couch, held her close, while the child cried softly into her neck. Minutes stretched into hours. No word, no call. Sarah paced, stomach knotted, mind racing through every worst possibility. She pictured Vinny alone on a rain-slick pier coat, soaked, facing men who wanted him gone. She pictured blood on concrete, pictured Mia asking why Mr. Vinny never came back. The front door burst open at 3:47 in the morning. Vinny staggered through, coat-torn shirt, bloodied at the shoulder, left arm hanging limp. Rain dripped from his hair. His face was pale, eyes wild. Sarah cried out, ran to him. Vinny, he caught himself on the doorframe, breathing ragged. They're gone. Marco. He's finished. Martha moved quickly, guiding him to a chair. Sarah knelt in front of him, hands hovering over the blood. You're hurt. Bullet grazed me, he said through gritted teeth. Nothing vital, but he got close. Sarah's hands shook as she helped Martha cut away the sleeve. The wound was ugly, jagged tear across the upper arm, bleeding steadily. Vinny winced but did not pull away. What happened? Sarah whispered. Vinny looked at her eyes, dark, haunted. He was waiting at the pier. Alone at first. Then, he started talking. Wanted me to know everything before he ended it. Sarah's breath caught. He ordered the hit on Sophia, Vinny said, voice cracking. 8 years ago. The drive-by. He paid the crew to take her out. To weaken me. To make sure I never rose higher than him. The words landed like blows. Sarah felt the floor drop away. Dizziness swept over her, violent numbing. She gripped Vinny's knee to stay upright. Mia appeared in the doorway, small, barefoot eyes wide. She saw the blood, saw her mother's face, and froze. Vinny looked at her. Something shattered in his expression, remorse so deep it seemed to hollow him out. Come here, kiddo, he said hoarsely. Mia hesitated, then ran to him. She climbed into his lap, careful of the injured arm, and wrapped her arms around his neck. Vinny held her with his good arm face buried in her hair. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you sooner. Mia patted his back, small, awkward pats. It's okay. You're here now. Sarah watched them, tears streaming, chest heaving with silent sobs. The revelation cut deeper than any knife. The man who had taken Vinny's first daughter had nearly taken his second. The guilt, the rage, the grief, it all poured out in the way Vinny held Mia, in the way his shoulders shook. Then Mia looked up. You're bleeding. Vinny managed a weak smile. Yeah, but I'm okay. Because you're safe. Sarah reached out, touched his cheek, the bruise, the tear tracks, the exhaustion. You could have died. I'd do it again, he said simply. For her. For you. The words tore through Sarah, fierce, final, undeniable. Love burned in her chest, passionate, protective, overwhelming. She leaned in, pressed her forehead to his. Their breaths mingled, warm, ragged, alive. Martha worked quietly, cleaning the wound, wrapping it in fresh bandages. Vinny never looked away from Sarah and Mia. Outside, the rain slowed. Inside, the tearing reached its deepest point, agonizing, redemptive, beautiful. Marco's confession had shattered the last illusion of safety. But in the breaking, Vinny had chosen sacrifice over revenge, protection over power. He had bled for them. And in that blood, something unbreakable was forged. Sarah whispered against his temple, We're family now, all 3 of us. Vinny closed his eyes. A single tear escaped. Yeah, he breathed. We are. Mia nestled closer. Sarah held them both, thin arms, trembling fingers, heart wide open. The city slept beyond the windows. Inside, 3 souls clung to each other, torn, bleeding, finally whole. The ultimate betrayal had come. The sacrifice had been made. And love, quiet, fierce, eternal, had answered. October 30th, 2025. The rain had finally stopped. A pale sun filtered through the tall windows of the brownstone in Park Slope, painting soft gold across the hardwood floors. Inside, the house smelled of fresh coffee, warm bread, and the faint sweetness of oatmeal cooling on the stove. Sarah Thompson stood at the kitchen counter, sleeves rolled to her elbows, carefully slicing apples for Mia's lunch. Her movements were slow, not from exhaustion anymore, but from a deliberate gentleness, as though she were afraid to break the fragile peace that had settled over them. Mia sat cross-legged on the rug in the living room, surrounded by crayons and paper. She drew with fierce concentration, a tall man with silver hair, a woman with long dark hair, and a little girl holding both their hands. Underneath, in wobbly letters, family, Vinny Moretti sat on the couch behind her, one arm still bandaged, the other resting lightly on the back of the sofa. He watched Mia draw eyes, soft throat working every few seconds, as though he were swallowing something too large to name. The bruise on his cheek had faded to yellow, but the deeper marks, the ones no one could see, remained vivid. Every time he looked at Mia, remorse rose like a tide for the years he had missed, for the danger he had brought to her door, for the first daughter he could not save. Yet every time Mia glanced up and smiled at him, the tide receded, replaced by something warmer, something healing. Sarah set the knife down and crossed to the living room. She knelt beside Mia, smoothed a strand of hair behind the child's ear. "That's beautiful, baby," she whispered. Mia beamed. "It's us. All three." Sarah's eyes filled. She looked at Vinny. He met her gaze open, unguarded, aching with everything he had carried alone for so long. Vinny cleared his throat. "Mia, sweetheart, can we talk for a minute?" Mia set her crayon down. She climbed onto the couch between them, small body fitting perfectly in the space they made for her. Vinny took a slow breath. "You know how sometimes grown-ups keep secrets because they're scared, not because they want to hurt anyone, but because they're trying to protect someone they love?" Mia nodded solemnly. "A long time ago," Vinny continued, voice low and careful, "your mommy and I. We met once. Just once. And then life pulled us in different directions. But something wonderful happened from that one meeting. You happened." Mia's eyes widened. She looked from Vinny to Sarah, then back again. Vinny reached out, hesitated, then gently took Mia's small hand in his large one. "I'm your daddy, kiddo. I didn't know until a few days ago, but I've loved you since the moment I saw you, and I promise I will spend every day making up for the time I missed. If you'll let me." Mia stared at him for a long moment. Then she threw her arms around his neck, hugging him so tightly his breath caught. "I knew," she whispered against his shoulder. "I knew you were special." Vinny buried his face in her hair. His shoulders shook, once silent, profound. Sarah wrapped her arms around both of them, tears falling freely now. The three of them sat like that, holding, breathing, healing, while the sun climbed higher outside. Later that afternoon, Vinny led Sarah and Mia to the rooftop terrace. The city spread below them, Brooklyn's mix of old brick and new glass, the harbor glittering in the distance. Vinny had stepped away from the shadows completely. The legitimate businesses, construction, real estate community centers were now his only world. The men who had once carried guns now carried blueprints. The power he wielded was quieter, cleaner, but no less strong. He had sold the glass penthouse in Dumbo. Too many ghosts. He had bought a house instead, a 3-story brownstone in Carroll Gardens, not far from where Sophia had once played. Wide stoop, small garden room for crayons and laughter. Sarah stood at the railing wind, lifting her hair. She still felt thin, still felt the echo of hunger in her bones, but the sharpness had dulled. She no longer counted every bite. She no longer woke to cold wind whistling through cracks. Yet she carried the memory of that life, like a scar, proof that she had survived, proof that she knew what it meant to be invisible. Vinny came up behind her. He did not touch her at first, just stood close enough that she felt his warmth. "I'm stepping away," he said quietly. "All the way. No more shadows. No more leverage. Just this. Us." Sarah turned to face him. "You're sure I've never been more sure of anything." His voice cracked. "I lost one daughter because I thought power mattered more than people. I almost lost another for the same reason. I won't make that mistake again." Sarah reached up, touched his cheek, the fading bruise, the silver at his temples, the eyes that had seen too much and still chose kindness. "You saved us," she whispered. "Not with money, not with power, with your heart." Vinny's throat worked. He pulled her close, gentle, careful, reverent. Sarah rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat beneath the bandage. She felt Mia's small arms wrap around both their legs. They stood like that as the sun dipped lower, 3 figures silhouetted against the skyline. Love had found them in the most unlikely place, a wrong number, a desperate plea, a child's drawing. It had crossed every divide, wealth and poverty, darkness and light, past and future. Skin color had never mattered. Bank accounts had never mattered. Only compassion, only protection, only the quiet decision to choose each other again and again. In that moment, the tearing inside them all reached its fullest depth, and then slowly began to mend. Not perfectly, not without scars, but with the kind of stitching that only love can provide, stronger at the seams because it had once been broken. Knowledge teaches us that true strength lies in vulnerability. Lesson after lesson shows that compassion can heal what power never could. Education of the heart reminds us that no amount of money can buy what a child's trust freely gives. Kaya knowledge whispers that redemption is not a destination but a daily choice. Lesson by lesson, we learn that family is not always born from blood, it is built from presence. Education opens our eyes to see that love recognizes no boundary of circumstance. Everyone watching this video, may you carry good health in your body, joy in your days, and deep peace in your heart every single morning. If this story touched you, please subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear that love and compassion can rise above any divide. Tell me in the comments, how did this story make you feel? Does it remind you of something real in your own life? Share from the deepest part of your heart. I read every comment and I truly listen. Goodbye for now, and I promise see you again in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.